water got inside and the sound was not the same anymore. And then eventually it completely didn't have sound at all when I was filming. So I got this new mic. It's the same brand but different color. It sounds the same to me. What do you guys think? Does it sound the same? I think so. So finally I'm back with you guys. It's been a few months. I missed filming, of course, so I'm happy to be back. This is what we're gonna be making today. It's extremely easy fingerless glove because you know guys, it's gonna get cold soon and we will need gloves, but we also want to use our phones, and this is a great way to keep your hands warm and be able to use your phone as well, or do other things like, I don't know, picking up things with your hands. This is how you put it on. You actually can do it either way, so this is to keep your palm a little bit warmer, I would say. So you can do it this way, but the preferable way is this way. And I do have this thing that I need to weave in, but right now I'm just gonna tuck it. So this is my favorite way to do that. Very easy and super fast to make. You can make this for your friends, for your family members. And I'm gonna be making the second one with you guys today. So what we're gonna do is chain 28. I do wanna say that this is a very thin yarn, so this is why I'm gonna chain 28. Usually, if you're using like a Bernat blanket, acrylic yarn, just regular yarn, or just Bernat acrylic yarn, you would chain 24 and it would be enough, but this is very thin yarn. It's thinner than usual, so I'm gonna chain 28 just because we need a little bit more. And you can use any yarn, of course, but I'm gonna use just some scraps that I found. I don't even know the brand of this yarn, and it's perfect because from this little thing I can make a few of those fingerless gloves. So we're gonna chain 28 and then we're gonna slip stitch into the first stitch around, so to make it a circle, and then we're gonna chain 2 and then double crochet in the same chain that you chained 2 into, and then double crochet around the circle into each chain, and then we're going to slip stitch into the chain 2 that we made, and we're gonna work like that for 9 rounds. First to 9 we're gonna work double crochet into each chain and then chain 2 at the beginning. Today we're gonna be talking about the Notorious serial killer couple from Australia, from Western Australia to be exact. This couple was so disgusting, oh my goodness. So trigger warning guys, there will be some gruesome details about the killings, and it's gonna be later on. Once I tell you guys what they did, it's just the most gruesome murders. It's gonna be later on in the story, but just to let you know that this one is gonna be a little bit more disturbing than most of my stories. guys, I'm gonna put a stitch marker right at the very last stitch before the slip stitch, so I know where the slip stitch is, because the slip stitch kind of looks like an actual stitch, but you don't need to double crochet in it. So we're going to be talking about David and Catherine Birnie. David was born on February 16th, 1951 in Wattle Grove, Australia. David was the oldest of 5 children, and his parents' names were John and Margaret. Now, in their neighborhood, there were a lot of rumors going around about their family. There were rumors that their family is dysfunctional. There were a lot of rumors about his parents, John and Margaret, being alcoholic, and even rumors that there's incest in the family. Allegedly, the family were living in filth and dirt, and their mom never cooked any meals. So this wasn't your typical household. The mom was not cooking any meals. Kids were always hungry. The father was never around. The father was allegedly always working, but I'm not sure where exactly his parents worked. However, when David was a young boy, his parents actually divorced, and his mother remarried to another man, and this man became David's stepfather. David's mother was described as an unclean alcoholic. Neighbors would say that she smelled really bad and smoked cigarettes all the time. Neighbors also noticed that the kids would always be outside, but the mom never came out of the house. So she might have not been working. Maybe she was receiving some kind of social security benefits for all the kids. There were also rumors that allegedly his mother, Margaret, was exchanging sexual favors to pay for taxi rides. I mean, out of all the things that you can do in exchange for sexual favors, she would receive taxi rides for that instead of food for the kids, maybe. Anyway, kids were pretty much on their own in this family, and obviously this past experience had a significant effect on David. as his daughter. So he ended up getting custody back for Catherine, and she started living with him again. So a few years after David and Catherine met at the age of 12, around the age of 14, David and Catherine began a romantic relationship. At one point, Catherine's father actually became concerned that Catherine was dating David, and he actually asked Catherine to stop hanging out with David. But you know how teenagers are. If you tell them one thing, they will do the opposite. So of course, Catherine and David continued dating throughout their teenage years. David Birnie left school at the age of 15, so he didn't graduate, and he went to work as an apprentice horse jockey. And people who worked with him during this time said that they noticed that David did not even like horses, so they weren't sure why he was working there, and he even managed to harm 3 horses while working there. Also, during the time when he was working at this place, he broke into a 70-year-old woman's house, and he was completely naked with a stocking on his head. He attempted to sexually assault this 70-year-old woman, and apparently this woman was a friend of the owner of this place, and they would hang out at her house a lot as employees. She would put out a table of food for them, and that's how they knew her. So because of these incidents, because he tried to assault this woman and he tried to harm 3 horses, he was fired from this race course. When David was 15 years old, he was constantly looking for opportunities to have sexual relationships with different people, and even tried to force himself onto his own little brother one night. And his brother later stated that he remembers waking up in the middle of the night and David was on top of him, and he managed to push him off of himself. Eventually though, David and his siblings were taken away from his parents for negligence, and they were all put in different foster homes. And since they were all put in different state housing, some of the 6 siblings never saw each other again after they were separated. How sad is this? So by 1966, David had been in and out of different prisons for misdemeanors and felonies, and he was only still 15 years old at this point. As an adult, David became addicted to pornography, and he also said that he was a paraphiliac. And paraphiliac is a person who experiences sexual arousals from atypical objects or weird, odd situations. In 1972, when David was in his early 20s, David met his first wife and married her, of course. Her name was Carrie, and the couple had one daughter named Tanya together. However, things didn't work out with that wife, and they ended up getting divorced in 1982. So they did live together for like 10 years, but there was no love anymore. During this time, Catherine was actually able to get away from the life of crime that struck by a car and killed in infancy. Can you imagine how traumatic that must have been for Catherine? And apparently she was holding the baby during this time when this happened. At one point, Catherine's husband, Donald, hurt his back and he couldn't work for a while. And the family actually ended up losing their home. So during this rough patch in her life in 1983, Catherine decided that she wants to see David again, and she began seeing him on the side. And they were secretly dating actually for a whole 2 years, with Catherine's husband Donald not suspecting anything. In 1985, after Catherine's husband dropped her off at work, as he usually did, I'm actually not sure where she was working, but when he came to pick her up in the evening, she was not there. She never showed up. So she just left her husband and her kids like that. And the crazy part is that after this, years would go by until her husband or her children would hear anything about Catherine. They didn't know what happened to her. She just disappeared from their lives. So she pretty much just left all of her 6 children for her husband to take care of them. What a wonderful wife and mother she was. So Catherine began to be with David, and at this time he was already committing bigger crimes than petty offenses. So Catherine went back to the life of crime, but not petty offenses anymore. Catherine and David began to live in a house together, and the house was located on 3 Morehouse Street in Belaghy, which is a suburb of Perth in Australia. Catherine and David never got married, but Catherine did legally change her name to Birnie. However, legally she was still married to Donald, and Donald still had no idea where she is, and she was changing her name at this point. David began to work at a used car lot where he sold used car parts, and his co-workers would later say that David was pretty much like a model employee. He was always on time, always willing to help, and always in a great mood. On October 6th, 1986, a 22-year-old girl walked into David's work. This girl's name was Mary Nielsen. Mary needed new tires for her car. David told her that he can give her a good price for the tires if she comes over to pick them up at his house. Mary at the time was a student at the University of Western Australia, and as a student she didn't have much money, so she agreed. She wanted to save some money and buy good tires for her car, and so she went to his house. Now let me just tell you that after this there is a trigger warning, so if you want to fast forward a little bit, because I will be getting into details. Not too much, but I'm just warning you guys in advance. So Mary comes and knocks on the door, and instantly, as soon as the door is opened, David and Catherine both grab her and pull her inside the house, and they slam the door shut. They held a knife to her throat and told her that if she screams, they will kill her. So of course she's doing everything she can to stay alive at this point. So they get her into the bedroom, chain her to the bed, and satisfied, finally, they decide it's time to kill her. However, they didn't want to do it at their own house because they didn't want to make a whole bunch of mess in their house, of course. So they put Mary into the trunk of their car. Can you imagine what Mary was going through during these hours? Oh my goodness. And then being put into the trunk of the car, not knowing where you're gonna be going, where they're taking you. They ended up taking her to a forest about 50 kilometers from the house, so that's about 30 miles. When they got there, David raped her again, and then afterwards he stabbed her to death. And let me just tell you that Catherine was not so innocent. She was pretty much the mastermind of mostly everything. Before this murder, she actually researched for almost a year about the decomposition of the body and how long it takes for the body to decompose. She also researched how to get rid of a body, so she was prepared for this, and she even found women that she wanted David to sleep with. They even had a phrase with David when Catherine would say, "I've got the munchies." And if David would respond with, "I've got the munchies too," that means he agrees and he likes that woman too. And this is the woman they're gonna kidnap. So Catherine could have stopped this at any moment. Weeks passed after the murder of Mary, and this is when the couple decided that they want to do this again. A 15-year-old girl by the name of Susanna Candy was a high school student in Netherlands, Australia. She was hitchhiking along the highway in Claremont. On the day of her abduction, it just so happened that David and Catherine were cruising along the highway looking for their next victim. When they spotted her, they stopped, and when she got in the car, they once again held her at knife point and tied her hands together. They brought her to the house where they chained her to bed and gagged her when David raped her. This time though, David wanted to keep Susanna for a little longer so he can abuse her longer. While she was being held captive, the couple forced her to write letters with her own hand to her parents so they don't start looking for her. So she handwrote her letters, letting parents know that she ran off to Queensland, Australia. She said she's staying with some friends and for her parents not to worry about her. They even forced her to make a phone call to her parents to let them know that she's okay, and in her own voice. That must have been so scary for Susanna, knowing that she's probably gonna die there. Catherine and David were holding a knife to her throat the whole time that she was talking to her parents on the phone. Then they made her write letters for them in advance so that when she's dead, they can next to Mary in Glen Eagle Forest. At one interview, when asked about the murder of Susanna, Catherine said that she was prepared to follow David till the end of earth, and she would do anything to see that his desires were satisfied. Catherine also said that she didn't feel a thing after killing Susanna, and that this murder made her feel stronger. She felt like she could do anything now. So they've already committed 2 murders within 1 month span. On November 1st, 1986, the couple was once again cruising around looking for their next victim when they spotted a 31-year-old Nolene Patterson standing beside her car on the highway. Nolene just ran out of gas, and actually Nolene was the couple's neighbor, so she knew them. Nolene was actually a pretty sophisticated woman. At the age of 31, she was a bar manager at a golf club, so the couple picked her up to go to the gas station, and Nolene didn't think anything of it because these were her neighbors. So she got into their car. Of course, the couple right away subdued her and took her to their house. This is when they chained her to the bed, as they did with the previous victims, and David raped her. The couple originally planned to kill Nolene the same day. However, David became emotionally attached to her, so they kept her for 3 more days as David continued raping her. And David really actually started liking Nolene because she was sophisticated. She had her life together. He fell in love with her. This is when Catherine became extremely jealous, and she gave him an ultimatum. Either David will kill Nolene or Catherine will kill herself. This is when David forced sleeping pills down Nolene's throat and strangled her as she was asleep. They buried the body a little bit further away from the other girls, and Catherine apparently had a great pleasure throwing sand onto Nolene's face as they buried her, and she even spit in her grave because she hated her so much. On November 5th, 1986, the couple found another victim. 21-year-old Denise Brown was standing at a bus stop on Sterling Highway. Denise was abducted at knife point the same way as previous victims, and then later she was assaulted by David. Denise actually sat up in her grave as they laid her body in it, thinking that she's dead. This is when David grabbed an axe and struck her twice with it, and they buried her again. I believe this girl was actually buried in another forest, not where the other girls were. On November 9th, 1986, a 17-year-old girl by the name of Kate Meyer was hitchhiking along the highway. She also accepted a ride from Catherine 70s, 80s, it was completely normal to hitchhike because people didn't have phones. There was no other way to get anywhere. You can't just call somebody to pick you up if you run out of gas. You have to hitchhike to get to a gas station. So it was not feared at all, like nowadays. After bringing Kate home and raping her, the couple forced Kate to call her parents and let them know that she's staying at their friend's house and she's okay. She was then forced to sleep on the bed next to the couple while handcuffed to David the whole time. And the next day, David actually needed to go to work. Remember, he still works at the used car parts place. He had to take the handcuff from his arm and forgot to chain her to the bed. So she was unchained at this point. She was not chained to anything. David also gave Kate sleeping pills, which she managed to hide under her tongue, and David didn't check, so she didn't swallow them. And after David went to work, Catherine went outside to carry out a drug deal without realizing that Kate was not chained to the bed. So Kate ran to the next room and broke the lock in the window there, because the room that she was in didn't have a window. And by the way, at this point, Kate was completely naked, so she managed to climb out of the window and she ran for her life. She ran and she began to knock on different neighbors' house doors, but the neighbors were also scared to open the door to someone that's completely naked and has handcuffs on her arm. So of course, nobody opened the door for her, unfortunately. And then Kate found a vacuum shop nearby. So she ran inside this vacuum shop, and the owner was inside, and she told him that she has been raped and she was held captive at this house. And this is when police was called, and Kate was able to give David and Catherine's address to them and detailed description of what they look like. Also, police didn't believe her at first, but then she said that she left little notes all over the house because she thought she was gonna die. So she hid little notes everywhere in the house. They can find those notes, and that's how they'll know that she's telling the truth. So Kate ended up being the person who broke the case and stopped this couple from having any more victims. Now police began to notice that there was a pattern of women missing, mostly from the highway. So police ended up going to David and Catherine's house when they weren't home, and they found chains in the bed and Kate's notes. Police waited for the couple to get home, and Catherine was the first to get home. This is when police approached her and arrested her. After Catherine and David were brought to the police station, they were questioned for hours. After police realized that it was impossible to get any information from Catherine because she refused to reveal anything, they decided to focus on David because it seemed that it was easier to break him. At one point, police asked David to show them where the bodies are because he wasn't revealing anything either. But after they said that, he suddenly said, "Yeah, I can show you where they are. There's 4 of them." This is when police went to Catherine and told her about David's confession. So Catherine said that she needs to speak to David, to which police said no, she cannot speak with David right now. Then Catherine decided to confess to one of the murders, and that was Nolene. She said she did kill her, and it was satisfying for her to kill. Catherine also didn't forget to mention that quickly as they were caught. They were each charged with 4 counts of murder and appeared in court on November 12, 1986. They had to be brought to court in cloaks, as the crowd was hectic and people were in shock. The whole Australia knew about this. There's one video where they're filmed and they're coming out of the cars and David is blowing kisses to the camera as Catherine is coming out, just looking smug. At this hearing, bail was refused for both of them. Next hearing after that was February 10th of 1987. At this hearing, an even larger angry crowd was standing outside the courthouse, along with media now. At this hearing, both David and Catherine pled guilty to 4 counts of murder, 1 count of abduction, and 1 count of rape, which I don't know how they decided that. Maybe because of the surviving victim. On March 3rd, 1987, they were both sentenced to 4 life sentences to be served concurrently. However, it was marked on a file that they can never be released. While sitting in prison, they exchanged 2,600 letters with each other. I don't know how they were allowed to write letters to each other. David also said that being apart from Catherine had sent him into a very deep depression. On October 7th, 2005, David hanged himself at the Kasurian prison in Western Australia. Catherine is still alive and is sitting at the Banyup prison for women in Western Australia. She is 72 years old right now. She apparently has been working as a librarian at the prison there and is also in a theater club. She has applied for parole multiple times and has been rejected every time. The surviving victim, Kate Moyer, has created a campaign to end Australian laws that automatically put convicts for eligibility for parole every 3 years. In 2017, one of Catherine's sons, who doesn't want to reveal his name for obvious reasons, he said that he wants his mother to be executed because his relationship to her has resulted in him being assaulted on multiple occasions. Her children also support Kate Meyer and her campaign. There's also speculations that there's a lot more victims that we know about, and the couple just never revealed about these victims. While talking with you guys, I completed 5 rows. We have to get to row 9, and then we're gonna do the haul, which is just consists of skipping a few stitches and then crocheting there. All you need for this project is to know how to do double crochet. So if you watch just one video of double crochet, you'll be able to complete this fingerless glove project with me. So I hope that helps. I will put the pattern in the description as usual. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.